podcasting on Facebook and YouTube. And welcome, everybody. Star Trek Lower Decks, the first season and the second episode, an episode called Envoys, is over. But we are just getting started here on Live Long and Podcast. I'm Dave Mader, coming at you here with Star Trek TV and movie reviews, joined by my brother, Jeff Mader. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm good.
And joined by Jaemeel Robinson, our friend, Jaemeel Robinson. How you doing, Jaemeel?
I am okay.
And we just finished watching this episode. Now, Jeff had watched it earlier. We had just come off a Big Brother eviction episode over on another channel, Super Mader Brothers Podcasting, all the three of us here. And then we just, Jaemeel and I watched it sort of as we were in here in the intermissions in between shows. And so we just finished it seconds ago. Jeff's been sitting on it a little earlier. And Jeff, I kind of want to go to you because you were of the panel we had in the first episode. You were the most sour.
Sour.
So you were the most, perhaps the least enthused by the pilot of everybody. So how did you feel with this episode?
I think this episode was leaps and bounds funnier, and the jokes landed way better for me in this episode.
You're looking for the jokes, right?
Well, I mean, that's kind of, I just think the show is trying to entertain you through comedy. So for me, like, the comedy has to work. And for the first episode, I think they were trying to do too much. I think they were trying to balance introducing all the characters, but also making the jokes work at the same time. And for me, it just they weren't landing as well. This episode, I found, because they separated all the characters and they all kind of had like their own storyline, I think it worked much better and it was a lot tighter.
And Jaemeel, okay, so your impression of Envoys?
It's the second episode after a pilot, so there's a little bit more comfort in terms of the tone that they're trying to reach. In the first episode, there were joke attempts, I should say, and there were references to Star Trek history and Star Trek terms. This episode, you saw a better blending of jokes. This ones that landed that were also Star Trek references. So it did double duty in terms of one, making me laugh, and I did actually laugh. Two, it was enjoyable to see Star Trek references used in jokes, but not in a Star Trek is stupid type of way, but like, hey, we're going to talk about a ridiculous situation in Star Trek. So, and plus I enjoyed both storylines A and B. B being better than A because A is you've seen this episode type a million times, but there's something excellent about doing an old trope and performing it well, and they kind of hit that sweet spot.
Well said. Yeah, like I agree with both of you. I was definitely really high on this episode. Like it started not great for me. Like I think the opening before the cold open in this episode, I think was probably the weakest part of this episode. But everything after the opening credits, I was pretty much laughing. I was engaged the whole time. And I think that both of the storylines in this episode were really strong and really worked and again was honest to what Star Trek is, which is all I need for me to enjoy this properly. You just have to kind of stick to truth to the Star Trek universe, because this is where this is supposed to take place. But I think you can still have a comedic angle. I think there was several moments in like the holodeck simulations and things like that where I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of the way it is. Maybe it's a little, it's exaggerated a bit, but in certain ways. But it's fun. I had a lot of fun with this episode, and I think we should kind of break it all down. But Jeff, what was your favorite joke tonight?
I liked all the stuff with what's the engineer's name?
Rutherford.
All the stuff with Rutherford I loved, but I really especially loved the Bajoran security chief guy, where he was like, "Welcome to the Bear Club," and he's like, "I don't really want to be here." He's like, "That is absolutely awesome. You got to do what you got to do."
Right. So there's two moments like that, right? So Rutherford's storyline is he initially is crawling around Jeffrey's tubes, having to do engineering work, and it's a hard job. And so I'm still learning all their names. I'm sorry, Devana. She suggests to Rutherford, "Hey, why do you want to have such a hard job? Why don't you come work in the science division?" He's like, "I can do that." And apparently you can. Like, now that's kind of a new concept. Like, yes, you've seen officers transfer divisions. I don't know if you can do it like this, where you transfer like to every job on the ship in one day, but it also kind of does fit this whole idea of like, you got to be true to yourself and you got to do what you got to do. And that this is an evolved society, that you can kind of play with that, right? What we think is the anticipated response is not necessarily the 24th century response to problems and to conflict, or what we think might be a perceived conflict, right?
Yeah, and it makes sense that you never really hear about people complaining about the division they're in. Like, you never heard Tasha's like, I wish it was in command as opposed to security. People seem to be in positions that they liked. They might want a higher rank, right, and feel like they want to earn or they deserve it, but you never really hear people say, I wish I wasn't in security, or I wish I wasn't in command, or I wasn't a nurse or in medical. It seems that everyone at least is where they want to be, right?
Right, you
So
have to be qualified to do what you're
yeah,
doing.
qualified, and you're putting in work. Starfleet, you just don't like show up and enlist, and all of a sudden you're like the chief of a space station or anything like that. No, that doesn't
No.
happen.
No, but I guess, like, okay, so presumably all of them went to Starfleet Academy, and so there's certain low level jobs they can do on any ship with like, or entry level security, entry level science, whatever. Because I guess especially at this point, like, they can transfer divisions around. Well, that's fine. And it was kind of fun to kind of wrap this all up in a whole episode with him jumping through the jobs. And yeah, and Lieutenant Shax is the Bajoran security officer, chief of this ship, as played by Fred Tatasciore. It's great energy in this character. Love his, like, he's just like, I'm the chief of security. Very Worf-esque, I think, despite not being Klingon.
Simulations called Smorgasbord. That's great.
Yeah, Smorgasbord on the city.
And then he just
it's so good.
Everybody, and like does the Kill Bill rip the eye out at the end. It's so great.
Right.
Okie dokie.
And then he's like, the Bajoran Shax is like, by the prophets. It's just
by the prophets. You are touched by the head of God. The gods.
Yeah. He's so impressed with how good he is at violence, but he's like this Bajoran. That's
peaceful Bajoran guy. Yeah, but the Bajorans can fight.
Yeah.
No, I know they can fight, but they don't fight like
they don't fight like the Klingons. But this guy does.
Yeah, he's huge. He's the biggest Bajoran I've ever seen.
He's fun. Like, all these characters are starting to, like, I'm starting to grow them. I think Becca Mariner is still the one I'm the coldest on so far. But she really kind of her stock went up big time for me in this episode, because I really liked the other storyline, which I guess is the A storyline with Boimler. It's Boimler, right? Yeah, Boimler. It's Boimler and herself, and he's been assigned to take this Klingon diplomat to some planet, to some conference, and so she overhears this, says it's dumb. That's kind of why I wasn't so into the cold open, but then she tags along for the mission, and then it turns out she knows what's his name.
They all sound the same.
Corinne. She was like. His name's Corinne the Klingon, and all of their names have apostrophes in them, which they don't.
No.
Koloth. We just did Durat. There's Gowron. There's so many Klingon names. There's actually more Vulcan names with apostrophes.
Yeah.
Than Klingon names, but whatever. But so sometimes it doesn't work for me. Like, that was probably one example where I was like. But then other times it really lands. I think most of like I said, everything after that. And with Boimler and Mariner, I loved her energy with this Klingon. Like, Corinne. What do you guys think?
Jeff?
Of what character? The Klingon guy?
Yeah, the Corinne. Just when they were on like the shuttle, like flying there, and And the whole like Boimler's the straight man, right? He's like the by the book guy, and she's like the John Candy to his Steve Martin in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I guess. And this is now like this guest they have along, and she's drinking blood wine and throwing up and whatever and all that stuff. Like,
I think
let me tell you about my sexual conquests. Like,
let me tell you about my sexual.
All two of them.
I think what's silly. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jaemeel.
No. Sorry, I was at the end of that punchline.
Sorry, I was going to say, like, I think what's silly with Mariner's character is, like, she doesn't seem like she's in Starfleet at all. Like, she seems like she might, like, she's like has the most disregard for any protocol or anything Starfleet's about. She doesn't yet. Boimler is like wants to be more like her, which I think is kind of, like, again, very like the antithesis of what Star Trek usually does. So like they're kind of turning that whole narrative on its head, like where Boimler is like the by the book protocol guy, and he's like wants to be more like Mariner, who's like this rogue, will do anything, has disregard, gets drunk, leaves the shuttle, cares more about entertaining her friend than doing the mission. It's so like not what Star Trek usually does. And we're supposed to kind of like be on Mariner's side, I feel like. I mean, I don't really understand like the narrative. Because like, but at the same time, like it works for a comedy, so like I understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, like I just don't know if it's like staying true to Star Trek, like, so that's where I kind of draw the line with her character, is that she needs, maybe like they're going to develop her arc and that she's going to become more by the book and like become more Starfleet, because like she needs to, like she's not really a good member of the crew, seems like, whatsoever. I mean,
Well, I think like what I'm reading. Sorry, go ahead.
I'll be quick. I think that what you have here is a perfect strangers scenario where you have two characters that are opposite ends of the spectrum, and as things develop, they come closer to the middle. Right, so both of them learn from each other. She's still going to be a little bit more on one side, and he's going to be closer to the other. And there's going to be a mutual respect that's found. There's points in this episode where there isn't respect but pity.
Sorry, Flames just scored. Flames just scored against Dallas.
Goal. So we're gonna see like things evolve, just as we're gonna see like a relationship kind of evolve in the B storyline eventually.
With Devonna and Rutherford.
Yeah, Tendi and Rutherford are definitely going to be like a couple, I think, in the future. I think they've already set that up, and it will pay off.
But who's the Trill, like the one he keeps making eyes at?
But that was a pilot, though.
But wasn't she here? Isn't that what makes Rutherford decide to go back to engineering? Is he sees her in the tube?
No, he saw the tube. She came out of it, but he saw the tube.
So it wasn't about the girl; it was just about the tube.
No, that's why at the end when he sees the computer processor in the Jeffries tube, he's like, "I'm in love," right? Like,
right.
That's why. But they allude to also that he wanted to be closer to Tendi, and that's they're already setting that up.
Yeah. Okay. So then, I'm liking this dynamic, and I agree with you, Jaemeel. I think that they are going to come closer together. I think that that's kind of what they were showing from the beginning. The whole thing where he covers for her in the first episode, I think is kind of like them showing that. And this is kind of that too, because she kind of is out matching him, because my read on her character is that, she's the son of Starfleet officers, daughter. I'm sorry. She's the daughter of Starfleet officers. Why? I don't know why. That was a slip of the tongue. But she's a Starfleet brat, effectively, right? And now she's followed her parents into the same line of work, and now serving on her mother's ship. And so she knows all these things because she grew up around it, right? She's been exposed to her whole life. It's not that she just went to Starfleet Academy like Boimler. She also just knows it, right? And like I think that this goes for a lot of people who just grow up in certain professions, like with famous parents. If you have actor parents, you might become an actor. Professional athletes are not uncommon as well to have the kind of same kind of trends. And so she's the same thing, but she has like a heart to her. Like I think that this whole thing where she got the Ferengi to do this thing to kind of get his confidence back. Yeah, and his stereotypical Ferengi. which I'm like, this is crazily like bad. Like, but then they pay it off again when it's just a prank where she
Yeah.
knows him and he's just a normal Ferengi guy. So they didn't completely bury the Ferengis, but he's just like human and
Wouldn't
everything
have
else.
surprised you had they not paid it off. You would have been like, that's what the show is doing. They're taking every stereotype, even the stereotypes of Star Trek are stereotypes of other things. Now they're taking that stereotype to an even bigger level, which I think works when you have to if you're making it a hijinks comedy. Like it makes sense, you know. So I understand why they're playing for those laughs, and sometimes they work, and other times like they're just kind of like, well, that's not really like a Star Trek way a Star Trek person would act, you know, like or like you know. So it's interesting that it works because it's a comedy, but at the same time you're kind of going as a Star Trek fan, like, is that really like the way they should be doing this? Like, I kind of, you know, kind of makes you scratch your head.
Sometimes I get that feeling sometimes, but maybe not as often as I think you're getting it.
Yeah.
I'm not getting it that often. I just don't think it's like, I think a lot of Star Trek fans are going to kind of go like, this is ridiculous. This is not the way a Starfleet.
Oh, a lot will, but they will anyway. If you went the other way, you would have like other fans who are going to like it, and I don't know if it's possible to please every fan. Like I know it's not, but I think that there's a certain mainstream acceptance you're sort of seeking, right? Like franchise, or you want to sort of be, or at least have some kind of a significant audience attracted to this. And I am like I sign off on this. Like I think that so far these 2 episodes are fine. I think it's a great entry into Star Trek if you're not a Star Trek person and you like comedy, and I think you can learn things about Star Trek from this and still have a lot of entertainment. I think.
Yeah. I just feel this show more than anything, I feel like a lot of times we're in situations as Star Trek fans where people are trying to adapt their um, their vision or adapt Star Trek to their vision, as opposed to kind to bring their vision to Star Trek. Like the world exists, right? Star Trek is a world and play in that world. Whereas a lot of times it's like, I'm going to change Star Trek because people don't like Star Trek and I want other people to like it. So I'm going to make it into something else.
Right.
This episode, more so than anything, it felt more Star Trek than the previous episode. And that was from
I agree.
you in finally in a sense, because it felt like a love letter to Star Trek. You can hate it. I can understand people not liking it, but at the end of the day, it felt more like this is a Star Trek fans making an animated hijinks episode.
Yes.
Right? It had a clear story, A and B, right? There were a lot of Star Trek elements, and they played with Star Trek elements with a twist, right? Not like we're gonna have Mariner go renegade and shoot through the ionic field to get onto the planet to find the Klingon and kill everyone in the bar, or punch everyone in the bar, or something weird or something like that. It's like she's going to be Han Solo and start shooting people first and everything like that. No, it felt more like Star Trek. She broke rules, definitely, but we've already established that why she's able to do that, right? And she's currently being looked at to get court-martialed or to get removed from her situation. So she's a screw up, right? She's a screw up that knows the rules, and you can kind of work with that. You can see that vision in terms of it working in the Star Trek universe.
Right.
That's I think if people came with an open, open eyes, that they might grow to love this show. If this show went on for 7 years, right? I can definitely see it gaining a momentum for Star Trek in general. This is me after 2 episodes, mind you, so it could be premature. But more things like this is what Star Trek needs.
It's good for Star Trek in a lot of ways because it brings a lightness to it. It makes you laughing, and it has a good Star Trek tapestry. But like, what I do think that this show is also going to do is divide people that are like the nerd fans of Star Trek. So like, I'll give you an example. I have 2 reviews here that were just written on IMDb, and just give you an idea of how different these, like how people are looking at the show. So one's from Bug Sponge. This is the good one.
Oh, hold on. That deserves.
A lower third.
Yeah, it does.
Bug Sponge.
Bug Sponge gave this 8 out of 10. It's actually all one word and lowercase. This episode was better than the pilot. The pilot was fine, but it had too much going on, which is what I said as well. I liked how this episode was able to relax a bit and only have 2 plots, Mariner and Boimer, and then Rutherford's. The pacing was better because of it, and Mariner, of course, takes center stage again with her witty humor and proof that experience trumps book studies. And the ending was sweet with Mariner staging the whole thing to help Boimer boost his ego. She's such a good friend. As for the subplot, I just loved how the upper guys looked mad at first, but then supported Rutherford's decision. Really cool that he wanted to spend more time with Tendi. Okay, that was the good review, which I agree with everything that was said.
Who's the next person?
John Ju 76. So JANJU 76. He wasn't a fan. He says, horrible. This is a continuation of everything bad that's already in episode 1. It's like they build a character that you identify with, Brad, and then you can look how that guy gets bullied by Beckett for 20 minutes. Beckett Mariner is one of the worst characters ever made, and should be immediately removed from the show. She is like pure anti-Star Trek and overall similar to Michael Burnham. Unbelievable they did this to this show. I gave the episode 2 stars because the side plot with Devana and Sam was okay. Just to clarify, the side plot was not good. Both of the stuff that happened is a mix of plot convenience and stupidity. The main plot was a 1 star and the side plot was a 5 star. So he liked the side plot, which
But he said it wasn't good.
He said it wasn't good. So
he liked it better. Okay, I don't agree with a lot of what
he
John
gave the side plot 5 stars. How does that make sense? Like 5 stars out of 10, maybe? I guess, yeah. And 5. Even then, it's so. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So,
okay. In the first review, I thought made some better points. But I think that the show is better. And he talks about identifying. Okay, we identify with Boimler. I identify a little bit with Boimler because he's a more traditional Starfleet guy, but he's so neurotic that he's also he's a cartoon. He's literally a cartoon, and so is she. But with
other
her,
end of the spectrum,
I also identify with her too at times, and I can see her point of view. So, and she's nothing like Michael Burnham. Like she's really nothing like in any.
But
like the opposite of Michael Burnham.
Look, let's just say she is similar to Michael Burnham, but I don't think that's the point he would really want to make or publicize that he's making. Because if you think that there's a problem with the character of both these, both Bromler and not Bromler, sorry,
Boimler. I want to call him Broimler, but it's Boimler.
It's Beckett. Yeah, Beckett and Burnham. The only thing that's similar is a lot of this.
So, and a female.
And female too. Like they're very different. Like I can understand you not liking both those characters, but saying they're the same.
Do you want to hear what
outing yourself?
Do you want to hear what
outing yourself?
You want to hear what okay. I didn't give you the title of the review, but you're gonna laugh. The title of this review is Summary: Violet Black Woman Bullies White Nerd.
Oh, dude, it's I would give that review 5 stars. It is literally you do such a great job. Was it John Ju? John Ju 76.
Straight from the incel message boards, I think. Here you go.
9 out of 25 people found this helpful.
Yeah, helpful. It's like
helpful.
I know which rallies John Ju goes to. All right, it's fine. You know what? I can understand people not liking the characters. You just got to come a little better with that. All right.
Yeah.
Come a little better at that.
My issues with Mariner, I think, are largely getting sort of like this really won me over to her, that I was really out on her early on because of how negative she was. And I think this is the Mariner I like, the one who sort of enjoys life more. And maybe a cavalier, right? Like I think that being cavalier suits her character better.
She reminded me a lot more of Dax and like of Kira, like kind of like that's who she reminded me more of than certainly Michael Burnham. Michael Burnham is very stiff.
And Burnham's like a robot.
Yeah.
Yes.
She tries to be this Vulcan human hybrid, and she kind of sucks. Like she's not very.
She doesn't really do either well.
No, she's not a very fun character. Whereas Beckett is like the off the charts, like fun character. Too much fun.
Yeah. And that's the part that we relate to. We see the Star Trek universe and we're like, this universe is awesome, right? There's a lot of duty and responsibilities involved, and we appreciate the stories that are being told. But in general, like Starfleet seems kind of cool, right? And she kind of shows that element of it, right? So like I think as the series goes on, we're going to see that being more embraced. Right, it's not going to be like a super adventure show. I think it's going to go back and forth, but like Star Trek's supposed to be fun in terms of like that type of scope, like be like us trying to put ourselves into the idea of the Star Trek universe. It's like, who wouldn't want to be walking around the Enterprise in a ship, and like we see these hilarious encounters with these aliens, and like, I would try to blackmail it to get a super tricorder. I wouldn't really just do a tricorder, but
a tricorder with a purple strip on it, or a stripe.
Purple strip, right? Or like, I would love to party with a Klingon, right? Like these things are stuff that like Star Trek fans would love to do. It's the reason why people cosplay, right? And pretend to be Klingons. It's because the universe is fun, right? In that respect, we can still tell serious stories, but the universe is fun. It's a playground, and they're just playing in that playground.
Right. Exactly. It was so. I was like, this Klingon could exist. You could see that this guy is like, he's just an eccentric. Like, they're all cartoons, and this show is a cartoon, and is more true to that than definitely Star Trek the animated series or anything like that.
Right. All right. You guys have to admit they are doing things that Star Trek would never in a million years do. Which one is they would never ever joke about killing kids. Ever. It would never joke about that on Star Trek, and they are doing it in this show.
Yeah, that moment with who's the commander? The first that's Jerry O'Connell plays.
Jerry O'Connell's character,
Jack Ransom, right? Like Commander Ransom is a terrible person. Like this is not a good Starfleet officer.
Right.
It's just like that joke. I think, while funny, takes me out of it more, right?
Okay.
And
you did like the Janeway maneuver.
I loved it. I love the Janeway maneuver. I love when he said, just do the Janeway maneuver. But no, I didn't love like when he's like, let's do a simulation with even more kids to see what happens. But it's also kind of funny because he's like, you're so bad at this that I have to see how bad you can go so I can tell my friends, because it's not real either. Yeah. So it's not the stakes aren't really there. He knows that this guy's not meant for command and whatever. He doesn't even have to tell him that he's meant for something else.
He accidentally kills the kids in the simulation, and then like Jerry O'Connell Ransom is like, all right, we're gonna set up another simulation. Maybe we can kill more kids.
Even more kids. I've seen this simulation run a million times. I've never seen this happen.
Right. That's why I think it's okay. I think that's why I give it a pass. But yeah, like, don't be sadistic, right?
Yeah.
Like, what I like is the message of hope and optimism. And like, I love this little, like, when he goes to his boss in engineering at the beginning and he goes, I want to switch careers. He's like, you do? And then like, it's like, and then it's great. Like they do it like, is it only twice they do it? But it's hilarious. Both times it kills. And it's because it's true. Like, be true to who you are. Be whoever you want to be, whoever you think you can be, right? Like, that's part of being in Starfleet. And I think also that this Mariner is starting to give me around to the whole thing, like you said, Jaemeel. Like, it's fun to be in Starfleet in the space, but you can die at literally any day, any moment, for any reason. So many bad things can happen to you, but life's exciting
Yeah.
as well, you know, and also boring sometimes. Like there's a lot of monotony to space.
But there's, and which is why I like shoot, I am also learning character's name, the engineer,
The chief engineer.
yeah, no, the
Oh, Rutherford.
Rutherford. Rutherford's B storyline kind of, it really rings true to me because I find, like, today at work I got to do some HTML coding when I was updating some training material, and I didn't realize how much I missed just sitting down in front of Notepad and just writing out HTML. And I know it seems so boring and so mundane, but like I literally got excited. I was like grinning, right, while I was
Yep.
doing this. And there are people like me that kind of find that ridiculous, what people will consider lame and boring, enjoyable. We find the beauty in writing out code or
Mhm.
working with computers. And like he realizes he can do other things and succeed, but at the end of the day, where he finds a lot of comfort and enjoyment is just staring at a panel and seeing the inner workings of a machine being in that
Yeah,
tube, right?
loved it.
And
Loved it.
what what isn't more Star Trek than that?
Exactly. Like just taking pride in what you do. And that's why I hate. Like that's why Ransom is starting to get on my
Re-
nerves a little because he doesn't.
re-
His job is command. His job is to be serious, and he doesn't.
But that's
seem
why.
like that, though.
But he's like, they literally position him as a terrible character. This is the first episode, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of the few episodes where he doesn't get made a fool of. Next episode, the preview. I know you all didn't see it, but I saw it. He gets made a fool of again, and I think that's going to go forward. He's a terrible commander, right?
But doesn't
And
that like reflect on Mariner's
captain?
mother, the captain, Carol Freeman, Captain Freeman, like that she has such a bad first officer? That's clearly bad. That we've only got to see him a little bit so far. We kind of know he's a scumbag.
He is literally a scumbag.
Yeah, and maybe that's funny, but it I think you have to consider how that reflects on your captain character, unless she's flawed somehow too. Which is that the premise of this ship or the show? Is that the senior officers are flawed? Like from what we saw from the engineer and the security officer, respectively, Shax, is that his name? Shax and what's his name?
Chief
Andy
medical
Billett.
officer was also was great again.
Yeah, she's great. Jill, yeah, Tiana, the Cation Starfleet medical officer of the Cerritos. She's great. I'm starting. I want to like these characters. I don't want to dislike them, and so that's why I need something. If so far Ransom's turned into a zombie in flesh, been very irresponsible, and now he's running simulations with Rutherford and being a little sadistic. And
would you not like the finale be a reference to the Star Trek Next Generation first season arc where he has like an alien in his head and they have to phaser his head and kill him?
Maybe I could see that. Like knowing that this is Kurtzman has some level of influence on this, that like he's gonna be revealed to be a Terran or something, and he's not a really Jack Ransom, and here comes the new Jack Ransom for season 2. Could be that.
Yeah, I could see that. Then Beckett kind of gets involved with him, and Mariner is kind of jealous because like the real Ransom is back. I could write.
Yeah, that could be an interesting thing, because then you can keep Jerry O'Connell in the character, but you don't have to make him such a not like an unbelievable character.
Yeah,
that's what I like. I know they're all exaggerated. I know it's a cartoon show, and that's fine, and I can give a little bit of license to that and a little bit of leeway, but you have to be true. And if he is a bad character, then you have to pay that off eventually down the story. Like I can wait, I can have some patience with it, but for now, I have to raise an eyebrow.
They're not being true to the Star Trek universe, though. Like they're really not. They're purposely like they are.
What's not?
What's not? Just about everything. The way the characters are acting is not consistent with the way a Starfleet character acts on any of the other shows. There would never be Beckett getting drunk with a Klingon and disregarding everything. There would never be they would never do that. Like that would just not happen. There are certain things that are true, you know, like you guys were saying about Rutherford, where you know got to be true to yourself, people supporting each other. That is yes, very true to Star Trek, but also there's just they're losing the what Star Trek does in the drama series, which is I understand it's a different format, it's a cartoon. I get what they're doing and I'm fine with it. It makes me laugh, but I'm not taking it seriously as canon or anything like that. It's a completely different thing. It's you know, it's not set in the same universe. I know you want it to be, Dave, but it's really, really not.
I don't care. It's more, but that's what they said it was. So now it is. So
for now.
You say that, but it's like it's really not quite right. You know, like they're not. They could have done a show where they were way more true to what Star Trek was with TNG.
Sure. Yeah, you could do an animated series that's very adult and serious.
Exactly. But they're not doing that, and that's why there's going to be a civil war over this show, because there are people like Jaemeel and to account myself that want to Star Trek to be fun, and I want it to be fun too, and I will laugh at the show, but I'm not going to take it seriously because it's not taking itself seriously, you know, and that's fine, you know. But just be true to who you are, Star Trek Lower Decks. If I'm going to learn anything from this show, is I will treat you the way you want to be treated, just like Julie Chen said the night of Big Brother, the golden rule. They want to be treated
okay three-way.
Yeah, that's right. They want to be treated as a fun cartoon, wacky show that has some good connections between the characters. They're using Star Trek as a tapestry. That's fine, but I'm not going to be like, oh, like, you know, somewhere in the universe, like I know they're going to do this eventually. They're going to have like Wesley Crusher show up on this show, and he's going to do like a voice and be his character. And then it's just kind of like everyone's mind is going to fucking explode when that happens, because then people are going to be like, well, wait, is it the same universe or is it not the same universe? Because in my opinion, it's not, you know. So
it's not an opinion. It's not a matter of opinion. It's not a matter of opinion.
Plus, it doesn't matter.
What's it a matter of?
It's a matter of whether whoever owns it says it is.
Yeah.
And if they, right. And it's if CBS, Viacom, who's the other one that's part of this whole thing? Whatever, the whole big corporation.
Delight, whatever. Look, Jeff, it's not going to be a problem until stuff from Lower Deck goes into the live action show. That's when there's going to be a problem. Okay, that's definitely what's going to be a problem, right? Like, you're telling me you don't want a Red Squad episode? Oh, I want a Red Squad episode.
I would totally enjoy it. It's not my argument. My argument is, if you're looking for this to be set in the same world that like Voyager and TNG were set in, they're not, in my opinion. Like they're it's a cartoon realized version of Star Trek where they can do anything they want and they can make the characters act in any way they choose. You know, so and that's what they're doing. It's like very much like Family Guy, you know, like you know, as if Family Guy was, you know, they could pretty much do a wacky thing where that Star Trek would never do or would never joke about, and then you can't say like, oh, well, those characters are Star Trek characters. No, they're not. You know, like like how are they? They're not true to those characters or to like that universe.
Why not? Why do you think it's not?
Because
I think I understand. I understand what you're saying, Jeff. I understand what you're saying, and I think we're gonna keep arguing back and forth with it's not true to being Star Trek. Like Star Trek is the live action show. That is live action show and movies. That's the canon, right? Everything else from the books, from the comic books, with featuring Worf getting shot by a Borg. Or in Lower Decks is just supplementary material. So as long as the supplementary material does not invade the live action, the real canon, then we got no problems.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, yeah, I agree. Like, it's not.
They're going to do all sorts of stupid stuff, and if it fails, it's going to be put in a pile, and people are just going to move on. The worry is that it's going to be written in stone as this is being canon, and you don't want to go down that path.
Yeah, because once you go down that path, you're gonna go like, okay, well then why are these characters don't act the way the rest of the characters act? Can you imagine they had a live action? Say they reshot Star Trek Lower Decks, but they didn't do it animated; they did it live action. You'd go like, what the hell is this? You know, right? So for me to acknowledge that it exists in the same universe, kind of is silly to me. You
Check
know,
this out. These are like the duty officers. They put it up in Star Trek Online based on the show, right? And so, like, could you see a live action version of these four people, or these
I
four
don't
main
want to.
leads?
I don't want to.
Right? Like, it's a little easier to, and could they fit into the same universe? I think they are. Okay, first of all, like to my point, it's not a matter of like whether I think a show is canon or not. It's CBS Viacom says it is, it is. So, or if they say it's not, it's not. You and I can choose to ignore that, but or I can I can go da 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 da. This doesn't exist if I choose to, but that's not what I'm going to do personally. I'm just going to. This is canon for the moment, and while it's canon, I'm going to look at it through that lens. That's just how I'm going to proceed.
okay.
And
Well,
for so far, I'm okay. I'm not like out, like saying that this is like the uniform's the only thing that kind of bugging me because
I do the
these,
uniform. I felt it more this episode than the other one because I was focusing on it. Look, I'm in the middle between both of you. Like, I don't care if someone wants to say it's canon. To me, live action is canon. This is
Mhm.
supplementary material.
Right.
I'm on board right now with this show because I enjoy the episodes, but I'm not looking for lower decks on Picard or Discovery
Right.
or whatever next new show. Right? This is its own separate thing, and
Yes.
I can handle that. I can handle that right now.
It's the Lower Decks universe. It's a completely different universe of Star Trek where the characters don't act at all the way Star Trek characters would act. So and that's fine because it's a comedy. Star Trek's not a comedy usually; it's a drama. So they have to act a completely different, wacky way, and that's to make the show work, which is fine. But I'm not going to pretend like this ship is cruising around in the live action universe. Like I'm going to choose not to do that. Just because CBS tells me that it is does not make me believe it. You know what I'm
CBS
saying?
is like, please watch it. Please watch it. We want Star Trek to be
well,
a
like
viable thing.
I don't know. Like, I guess they probably tried to figure out if it made the show more marketable or less marketable if it was canon, and they probably decided it was more marketable as canon, so they chose to do that. But they can walk away from that pretty easily at any time.
Yeah.
And you would so is it the same as a comic book and like a novel and something like that? Because those are not canon, right? If you pick up like there's plenty of books you can get that are Star Trek novels that are not that are like your comic book, Jeff. That's not canon, right? But it's a story that
Different than Star Trek Lower Decks, though. It's a cartoon comic book character of Worf. Okay, it's actually a character from the live action. But you're saying it's not canon. Why?
that's not canon
Because it's a book.
because
What if,
CBS says it's not.
what if the writer of this book said it's canon?
No, it doesn't count. It's not
canon?
up to the writer either. It's up to who owns the entity, who owns the property, the IP.
Star Wars EU was canon until it wasn't.
Right.
So
Right.
Now it's
doesn't make
Legends.
it doesn't make the books any less good or enjoyable as a Star Wars fan. So
Right.
that's all we have to look at it. Hey, if we had the same amount of content as Star Wars, technically Star Trek does in terms of live action offering, they only have what 9 movies and a handful of shows. Star Trek has a multitude of 22 episode seasons of high quality entertainment and Enterprise, um, and um, and a slew of movies. So let's and books as well. But regardless, right? Star Wars fans, in the grand scheme of things, can pick and choose what they want to get their enjoyment from. If they want to follow Thawne and see Thawne's storyline, right, that still exists and that's available. It doesn't matter if Disney says it's canon or not, it's still enjoyable for some. Other people skip it, right? And we're going to get to a point with Star Trek where there's going to be portions of what is available to watch that some are going to disregard, some are going to be regarding as entertainment, and whoever's holding the keys is going to say this is important, this is real, and the other stuff aren't.
Right, and that's and I'm like, okay, and the whole canon argument, and like to a lot of people it doesn't matter. Like I'll watch this show or I'll watch this episode, this movie, whatever, and if I like that movie, that's all that matters, and that's fine, and I good for you. But for me, no, I need it to be more expanded. I get enjoyment from the depth of it and the more depth it has, and I'm okay with you having splinter universes and realities and whatever. You can do whatever the hell you want. Just be true to it. Be consistent to it. Have certain guidelines. Like whatever you said happened. Retconning things out without explanations, I just don't think it's worth it. I think I think it's the whole fact that we have the Chris Pine, J.J. Abrams version of Star Trek. That's nice, but I think the reason it didn't take off because it isn't connected. It's a reboot, and I'd rather go back to what this whole other depth of and amazing stuff. And so, as far as Lower Decks fits into the Star Trek universe, yes, these people are like, if Roger Rabbit was in Starfleet, that's kind of what we're getting. But we're in some ways, but in other ways, it feels authentic. I feel like Beckett Mariner is the Starfleet officer Brad who has a heart, but she has like an attitude, and she kind of like reminds me of people I've met in life. And Boimler is way too much. He's even further much a cartoon character. But the other two, Devana and Rutherford, they're mostly good. Like I could see them fitting in.
Those two characters seem like they would belong in Star Trek, Rutherford and Tanya.
Yeah.
They seem like they would belong in the Star Trek universe. The other two characters, more Boimler is more a Star Trek character, but he's even more neurotic. But like Beckett does not seem like, name me a character that's in Starfleet that's like Beckett. I can't think
Dax. Dax is the closest version of anyone like her, and even Dax is more serious. Maybe like who says Rogue?
Beckett would have been killed. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, characters who are arrogant like her typically don't live.
Yeah. So that's why you don't really recall, right? Or she would have been a part of Red Squad.
She definitely would belong in Red Squad. She's as arrogant and as brash as the Red Squad characters are in that episode for sure.
Which I bring up because I think as her character evolves and they reveal that she was in Red Squad, you can see where she was to where she is now, right? And you'll appreciate the journey that you've taken from first episode where she was very annoying to a more well-rounded character.
Yes, I do think you're right that it's on purpose, that they want you to kind of hate her right now and they want you to come around on her, and they did that at the end of this episode where she like set up the Ferengi thing. They want you to kind of like not like her at first and then come around at her by the end of the season. And I think with Boimler, they kind of want you on his side, and then I think that by the end they want you to kind of find him annoying, which it's working.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's
punch him in the face.
Yeah, you're right. So they're both here, and then they're gonna kind of cross paths and kind of end up on either side of one another, I think.
But is it weird? Isn't it weird to you though, Jeff, that all of the four main leads, these four ensigns, all of the respective voice actors, they all physically resemble their characters, except maybe for Devana, who's not green, but she's otherwise, you could see them all stepping into live action versions of these characters.
That's modern animation, where it's like we don't want voice actors to be to change into those characters. They're like, oh, we're gonna make an animated movie and we're gonna have these actors, so we're gonna change the animation style to match the look of it. It's like you have Shark Tale. I don't expect like a shark to look like De Niro or look like a famous actor or something like that. Elsa doesn't need to look like not Kristen Chenoweth, but like
Elsa Menzel. Is Idina Menzel.
Like I don't need that. Like, let them play the characters, right?
Oh no, they don't
Whoever
have
character.
to. They
I
don't
know,
have
but like
to.
that's
But
modern animation where they make the characters look like whoever is performing, as opposed to having the performance meld into the character.
right. Well, I agree with you that I think that anybody should be able to play whoever. But like the guy who plays the Bajoran guy with the mustache, he doesn't look anything like his character. So it's there are exceptions here.
But
But
the main stars.
yeah, like and that's a whole other debate, like who can voice who and whatever. I personally think it's whoever can pull it off. Really, it's is what it comes down to, and don't hurt feelings or don't be like
That
don't
does,
be
it's an irrelevant question to what we're like. What if the show works or not? Like I can really
yeah.
care less as well. Uh, the show should be about the writing and the performances and whether or not it works. Now this show does do things well. I don't. This episode impressed me way more than the first episode. The first episode I thought was obnoxious in a lot of ways with how much it was trying to fit into 22 minutes. The second episode was much better. They separated the characters. They had a lot more fun, I felt like, and the jokes worked because they were able to kind of like not have to do so much setup and make you like this. The first episode was like this show, and I'm like, geez, everybody I think was kind of like,
Yeah, it had no room to breathe. I agree with you. Yeah.
this episode much better. They were able to kind of relax and really, so like, why do the first episode? Why not just give this episode the first episode and not even do that first episode? Like that's kind of
Yeah,
Comparing
first episode.
episodes
You
out
got to
of order.
establish characters. You got to introduce the world.
You
but-
take the hit with the pilot. You got to take the hit with the pilot. It
I mean,
sucks, but
it sucks. Yeah, see, that's what I don't like because I don't like because like
just
I
imagine if it
guarantee
was
you there were a
pilot
lot of
movie.
people that watched the pilot and did not want to watch this second episode. And I think if you just made this the pilot, I think it would have kept people a lot more engaged.
or do it to a two-parter. Like that's what most of those old series, like TNG, Voyager, DS9, Enterprise, they all had 2-hour premieres to their
Right.
shows, right? And I don't know why you would, like, I'm not saying you do a 2-hour version of this, but do like a two-part, like do a 44-minute version of this of a pilot, and then you can have more of a story.
But does it even matter in nowadays when you have people that don't really watch television week to week? They just watch like a set in a row. Like I got people telling me, you didn't like blah 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 show? Oh, just watch the first season. Second season is when it gets good. It's like, so you tell me I have to watch like what 4, 5, 6 hours of television before I actually get to something that I might enjoy, right?
Yes, this is my kind of
And
problem with
we only got a half an hour pilot.
yes.
Half an hour pilot. And second episode, they're able to have stronger returns. So, which to me is the better experience.
To me, I mean, I think I could have done without the first episode. I don't need that setup of those characters. They could have just jumped right into this first episode. I would have been happy. I don't like, other than knowing their names, they really just were showing off like where they are. This is the ship. This is the captain. This is the, that's all they were doing last week. Like, and that's fine. And then they were trying to cram in the jokes, and to me, they weren't landing because they were trying to do too much. Now, this is what happens with pilots, and like you said, Jaemeel, we have to take the hit, and that's fine. But I don't have to like it. I much prefer this if they just kind of stuck to this formula that they did in this episode. I think it would have been much stronger premiere. And premieres are important. People like first impressions are important, and you have to like the show to come back. And I think a lot of people probably watched this, especially a lot of Star Trek fans, and probably went, "Oh God, like I don't know if I want to keep watching this." I was one of them. So I said, when I watched the second episode, I go, "Okay, this was much better for what this show should be. Wacky show that's not really Star Trek canon, that can do whatever it wants and can be in all sorts of different timelines if they want, or they can do mirror universe. They can use all the Star Trek stuff, they can use the Star Trek canon, but that doesn't mean I'm going to believe that this is Star Trek. Like that's kind of
They'll convince you.
Yeah, all right, well, you can
Also,
convince
in
me all you
addition
want.
to that, I'm like, if you're a Star Trek fan and you're telling me you're outs on a show because you had a terrible episode in the first season, I'm like, well, How
Then
did
you don't know
keep
Star
watching
Trek.
Welcome to
Next
Star
Generation,
Trek. Yes,
Welcome
sure.
to Star Trek.
Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery?
They
Like
are all
you
with
wouldn't
sin.
you wouldn't have watched anything then because all of them have terrible episodes in the first season. You can
Absolutely.
maybe say something about the
Horseshit
pilot, but like like my gosh, that lower deck pilot is not the worst piece of Star Trek in the first season.
No.
Um,
Oh no,
I
no.
have ever
It's not
seen.
even the worst Star Trek pilot.
Is that the animated series?
I guess it's probably like, yeah, I wasn't even considering that, but like I probably have to give it to
Consider the animated canon, the animated series. That's canon.
as canon.
They consider it canon technically right now.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, it's
I
all
can
canon.
also choose to not believe it's canon, and I think my
You can
life.
choose to
Yeah,
believe this.
yeah.
There's a man on the moon, but it doesn't make it true. It's
It's not
you know,
just the writer gets to decide, or the studio gets to decide if it's canon. The audience will make it the determination. The audience will watch this and go, okay, is this in the same universe?
I'm a fan of Highlander. Okay,
No,
but
dude.
Highlander is a franchise that has had its canon issues, okay? Because they made the first movie and everyone loved it. But guess what? It was a movie. It was a contained movie. It should have been left alone, but it wasn't. How can you? It's so good, right? Then they made the second movie, and everyone hated it because they made they made the immortals from space, and aliens were involved, and everyone hated it. They're like, screw it, it doesn't count. But then they still called the next movie, which was like a reboot sequel. They still called it Highlander 3. I don't know why.
Endgame
No, that was the sorcerer. That was the one with the
with Mario Van Peebles.
yes, yeah, Mario Van Peebles or whatever.
Yeah, 4 was the Endgame, but that was
Four was
after-
Endgame, which is another reboot. So there's, and they're all kind of part two film, but that Endgame connects to the show, which doesn't necessarily connect to the movie, but it kind of does. So that is a universe that is riddled with its fragmented canon, and to bring it back is almost like nonsense, because what is it? What counts? What doesn't? I don't know.
Exactly, which is what we have with this show.
And we don't want to get to that point. We don't want to get to like a universe, like even Star Wars right now, I think is a mess. I think the fact that they threw out all the books, like the fact the books were never canon, right? Like Luke used to come down to Lucas was the gatekeeper, and he decided what counted and what didn't, but now he doesn't own it anymore. Now it's up to Disney to decide.
Right. So you just made my point. So some people will decide that Lucas's story is canon and the rest of it is bullshit, right? So I could decide that like the new movies that J.J. Abrams made, I could say that's not George Lucas's story, that's not canon. Now you will go, well, no, but the studio says it's canon. That doesn't mean it is to some people. Some people are going to decide that is not in the same universe. They're going, they're going.
Oh yeah, you can decide anything you want. You can decide that
canon doesn't matter. What you enjoy is what matters,
Exactly.
dude.
Right, sure. But if you're telling a story about a general universe, right, you have to at a certain point decide, are these characters in the same universe as whoever, right? So and if they are those characters the exact same person? So if Jean-Luc Picard shows up on Star Trek Lower Decks, he's not going to act like Jean-Luc Picard. He's not going to be the same guy that is in the TV show. No, he will be the same name. We have if Patrick Stewart does the voice, will it be the same voice? Yes, but the character's not going to be the same guy.
We don't know yet. We don't know what to expect.
He could, get poisoned by radiation and start making smiley faces in frozen clouds, or the ship could go under siege and he decides to be John McClane and do Die Hard in it. Like, there's a whole bunch of comedic situations that could be presented, just a different spin of the exact same situation that happened in Next Generation. Regardless of that, doesn't matter. If you enjoy it, way to go. If you
I can
don't,
still enjoy it. I can still enjoy it and accept it as canon.
I'm not arguing that.
Yeah. All right. Let's rate the episode. Because I think we liked it. We just can't agree how it fits in or not, or does it matter? So
I'm just glad that Jeff got some enjoyment out of it. I would hate for you to watch something that you don't like.
right. So Jeff, you gave a 4 to the pilot. What do you
All-
want to give to this one?
I'll give it a 7.5 for this one. All I will say for my rating here is, and like why I can only enjoy this show if I decide it's not in the same universe really as the drama series. Because if I start to decide that it's in the same universe and these characters are joking about killing kids and they're doing certain things that don't make any goddamn sense to the universe, I can't enjoy the show.
Okay,
So
Jeff. I won't bring up that it's canon to you. I'll let you know if it gets rescinded. Jaemeel?
I'll put a 7.5.
Okay. Jane did give me a high level review. She didn't give me a number though, so we'll wait to check in with Jane later on her exact score. But I'm
She
gonna
did give
give
it a 10, saying great representation of canon.
yes, it was a pretty good representation. Except for maybe that ransom kid part, but okay. So I'm gonna give it a 9.1.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So
I don't know. You're giving this show a ceiling right now. You're giving that this is the ceiling.
right. Well, do you know what? Okay. Do you know what I think the show really needs for me though? Honestly, is it can be a jokey show, but because I because I am looking at it through that lens that Jeff doesn't want to acknowledge it as. I need because the Orville did this too. Because the Orville is another show I like that is a different universe, but it's very similar to the Starfleet Star Trek universe, and they had to deal with like a existential threat, an invasion in season 2, and it was able to switch tones, what I thought very effectively, back into something more TNG esque. And I think I would like to see this Lower Decks try that, but I know that they have to sort of build this audience, and maybe that's not what the show's meant to be ever. But I wouldn't mind if it tried to be a little bit more like that. That's all.
So, the Bajoran, the Bajoran security chief needs to get a mustache in episode 6, like Bortus, like Bortus.
Smorgasbord.
Smorgasbord. I love it.
He has
At least we all enjoyed it. By the way, the three of us averaged out at an 8, so an 8 out of 10, pretty good for the second episode, I think.
yeah.
So the next
It was
episode,
a perfectly fine episode. It was funny.
so the next episode is going to be called Temporal Edict.
Oh, time travel?
I think we're gonna get some time travel elements in the next episode, and I'm excited about that. How do they deal with that, and what's that going to look like, and whatever. So, yeah, it's going to be good. All right. So, is there anything else you guys wanted to say about this episode? Okay, or tonight. All right. So, thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening, everyone. We're just coming up an hour here on our coverage. We let us know what you think. Make sure to subscribe to us here on Live Long and Podcast. Listen to our other shows. We're on here multi times a week talking about old and new Star Trek, including Lower Decks. And our next thing is going to be on Saturday night. We're doing the next Star Trek Radio Theater here, and we're going to be doing an episode from Voyager called Worst Case Scenario, with Michael Chan and Jessica Chan joining us in because we've been a smaller crew the last few weeks. And so I'm excited to tell that story. That's going to be a lot of fun. Just to blow that up. Well, now I have to hide this to show you. But you can see there, just that's the graphic there. And Kevin Millard's going to be playing Tom Paris, and Jeff's going to be playing Tuvok and Cass. I'll be playing Janeway and Neelix. My wife Jane's going to be playing Seska, or holographic Seska. Michael Chan playing Commander Chakotay, and Jessica Chan playing Lolana Torres and the Doctor. And Ashley Miller will be our narrator again, and also is the voice of the computer, and Harry Kim. Yeah. So all that going on Saturday night for our next performance. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're also playing holographic versions of those respective characters too, because that's a very holodeck focused episode. So and then Tuesday nights we do D Space Nine, and right now we're doing Wednesday night, we're doing original series rewatches. So all of those are out there.
Really, really suggest that people jump aboard and come and join us for D Space Nine next episode. It's going to be a good one.
D Space Nine, we're doing Duet next Tuesday night, and I am super excited for this one. I don't know. Yeah, I'm ready. And we're doing Cat's Paw on original series next Wednesday. Do you know this episode?
I can't remember it.
It's bonkers. It's Kirk, Spock, and McCoy in like a haunted castle with magicians and sorcerers and big cats and
You're describing an episode of Lower Decks.
no, yeah. Oh, how could this be in the same universe? Like, you know, it is, because Star Trek is ridiculous in a lot of ways, and I think that's what the show is ironically pointing out to me, which is what I like. So, but can be very good and serious too. So anyway, that's it, I think. Oh yeah, check out our other channel, Super Mater Brothers Podcasting, where we do Big Brother, as we mentioned at the top of the show.